about real issues that affect us in our towns and cities. And I'm loved by the people. And they hate that. So this is now the ultimate. The ultimate is to get rid of me. I'll be put in prison for, do you know, it's a civil offence. This is a civil offence. I was not allowed a jury. The Magna Carta common law says that if you can face more than 6 months in prison, you'll be tried by 12 members of your peers. The reason for that is for fair justice.
You don't have a jury. Let's underscore that. You don't have. Trial by jury is one of the foundations of British common law. Trial by jury, hard won. And that's now been swept aside in your case, right?
I wasn't allowed a jury. I wasn't allowed a jury. So this is the only thing that they could get through the back door, the Attorney General's government. They could bring it through the back door to then sentence a man to up to 2 years in prison with no jury. I've been convicted by an appointed judge, a judge who was appointed to her position 2 weeks ago.
Welcome back. Joining us now from the UK is Tommy Robinson. His case is one of those cases that comes up periodically that are landmark cases that tell us the state of our society, the state of our laws, and set the course for the future, either up or down. You know, one of those cases, I think, is going to be Julian Assange, but another one is Tommy Robinson, and I want him to lay out for the American audience exactly what he is about to face, but how he got here in the first place. And, of course, you can find information about Tommy Robinson. He has a website, tr.news. Joining us from the UK is Tommy Robinson. Thank you for joining us, Tommy.
Thank you, David.
Tommy, tell the audience a little bit about what happened. This goes back to May 18th. Tell us what happened on that day, but give us a little bit of a background as to what led up to that with the grooming gangs in the UK that you were trying to report on as a citizen journalist.
So on that day, I was reporting outside Leeds Crown Court on just another gang. We've seen the industrialised rape of a generation of our daughters. Okay, there's been a conspiracy of silence by political leaders, community leaders, religious leaders. They've all let it happen. And I've been banging my head and screaming and literally crying about this for over a decade. And when we first started telling people the stories that Muslim gangs were actually being allowed to kidnap our daughters and take them from the age of 11, prostitute them, rape them, and when families ring the police do nothing, people didn't believe it until we had a government in-depth report and research into a town called Rotherham. In this small town, 1,400 children were identified as being victims of these Muslim paedophile gangs. 20% of the male Muslim population of that town is currently under police investigation for rape. 20%. Wow. Okay? Wow. 20%. So when people understand the level of this crime, and then these gangs have been, there's 72 towns and cities now, they operate the same, their actions are the same, the way they groom the victims are the same, they prostitute and take the girls, they kidnap them and remove them from one town to another, from one city to another. And in every one of these towns and cities, the police stood by, the government stood by, they knew it was happening, they done nothing. The reason they done nothing, because they were scared of being deemed as racist, because all the perpetrators were Pakistani Muslims and all of the victims were young English white girls. So that you can understand.
What we call that here in the United States, we call that racketeering, and they're trying to cover that up. I mean, you know, regardless of what their motivations are, regardless of what groups they belong to, it is a crime, it is organized crime, and it ought to be reported, but they're covering that up because, again, as you pointed out, they don't want to report that it's being done by a Muslim group. So because they're Muslim, they get a pass on this racketeering, on this organized crime of sex gangs.
Well, we have this globalist agenda of open borders, and then what we do, or what I began to do, was tell the reality of actually what it's like when you open the borders to the third world and when you import millions of people who are from a different culture, who have completely different views on women, tolerance of women, their views on different people from different faiths, and we see genuine hatred and hostility. I started telling the public about that. Now, of course, the globalist agenda and the government, they don't want the British public to be aware of this. They would do anything they can to cover it up, and they did for 20 to 30 years. When I formed a street movement of tens of thousands of people marching in towns and cities, screaming about our daughters being taken, only then did the media then report. The media were aware of it. They were all aware of these crimes. Politicians were aware of it. No one reported it. We basically broke down political correctness. We smashed it in the face, and we went out on the street screaming and telling the world what they're doing to our daughters in these towns and cities. Now, just so people understand the scale of the problem, 90% of the convictions of these gangs for raping these young children are Muslim men. Muslim men only make up 4 or 5% of the British population. Well, Muslims do, 2% Muslim men. But they're responsible. Now, I went to Leeds Crown Court, and what we see now is where the police have had to start making arrests, they've started arresting them all over the country. But what the judges do straight away is they put a reporting restriction. So 30 men will be on trial, and no one can talk about it. No media are allowed to talk about it. So what I've done is I started looking and researching all these cases, as I've done for years. I looked, I knew there was a case on in Leeds. I'd heard there was a reporting restriction, but there's no national website to check if there's a reporting restriction. There's nothing. So I'd heard, I travelled up to Leeds. I went into the court and said, is there a reporting restriction on this case? I was told by the man who come to court and testified that he wasn't aware of one. He didn't know. I then looked, at that point, I looked on the court website where the list of names are. And in that list of names, there was no mention of a reporting restriction. Okay, no mention at all. And on the judiciary's own website, the government's judiciary website, there's 27-page document, 40-page document that gives the guidelines for media and journalists. This is the guidelines for contempt of court for reporting restrictions. So I previously paid myself to go to the leading law firm in London to get training because I didn't qualify as a journalist. I'm a citizen journalist. So I went for training on contempt of court to understand the laws and boundaries of what I can and can't say, where I can say it. In my training that I had on reporting restrictions, I was already aware that a judge has no power. And this is still now. If you go on the website now, Google reporting restrictions, criminal courts, go to page 27, you will read, a judge has no power under section 4.2 of reporting restriction to put any restrictions on information already in the public domain. So when I got to Leeds, I was aware of a lot of the details of this case. I was aware of the previous verdicts. But to make sure that I couldn't fall foul of the law, even though there was no mention of reporting restriction anywhere, the guidelines say that if there's a reporting restriction, it must be on the website, it must be on the courtroom door, it must be on the screen in the courtroom. It was nowhere. It's been proven that they had failed 3 procedures to alert people of the reporting restriction. But I still stuck to with it, the training that I'd received that says only reveal information that's in the public domain. Do you know what they said in court? Do you know what they said, David?
No, what they said?
That information on the judiciary website is wrong. Now, if you go now, and look on the judiciary website, there is a foreword by the Lord Chief Justice himself, and he thanks Illegal Chambers for the legal accuracy of the judiciary website. So, and then this is where they just make it up as they go along. Do you know what? So I've been convicted. I stood outside court. I held my phone and I read the names of the BBC News website. Every bit of information I read was in the public domain. I was taken off the street there and then, and I was in prison for 13 months without any due process, without asked if I was guilty or not guilty, without a trial, without even being told what I'd done. Now,
yeah, that was the amazing thing for us watching this here in America. The fact that they jerked you, you're showing people going into the court. You're not in the court. You're not in the judge's court. You're showing people going into the courthouse. They grabbed you, and within 24 hours, you're in jail. I mean, that was a kangaroo court proceeding, if ever there was one. But you're pointing out, just to underscore the fact that you had followed the procedures, you had read the information that was in the public domain that was published by the BBC, and their information on their own website was inaccurate, and still they came after you and put you in court. In jail.
So they put me in jail. So they took me off the street instantly, put me in prison. Now, a Free Tommy movement grew. They tried to prevent the public from even knowing I was in prison. I'm thankful and still grateful to everyone in America, everyone in Australia, everyone in Canada, who, because of reporting restrictions they in place these reporting restrictions that no one could be told what happened to me. Now, because of the foreign media interest in this, a Free Tommy movement grew. Then there was a campaign and legal fund to get me out. We got an appeal after 2.5 months. I spent 2.5 months on solitary confinement. I lost 40 pounds in weight. I was then released from prison. And they accepted, in the highest court in our land, they accepted that everything they'd done was wrong. It was flawed. I was released for this reason. They then took me back to the Old Bailey. I went before another judge. I produced my statement of evidence. He kicked it back to the government again. The Attorney General sat on it for 5 months. Only after I produced a documentary which categorically proved evidence with undercover footage that the BBC programme Panorama was inventing news, fake news, creating sexual allegations against myself. I showed it all in the biggest expose of the BBC this country's seen.
Hang on, Tommy, we got to take a break. We're going to be right back, but that illustrates why. You're talking about how it was a foreign press. They put a gag on the British press, and they all obeyed that. It was a foreign press that brought attention to it. That's why they want global control of speech through social media. Welcome back. We're talking to Tommy Robinson live from the UK. Again, you can find him at TR News, tr.news. And wanted to get his comments and get his plea to President Trump. This is a case that President Trump needs to pay attention to. I want to talk more about that, but Tommy's got a limited amount of time, so I'm going to give my analysis to this. I want to get back to Tommy Robinson. Tommy, you were talking about how it was vital when you got jerked off of the street as you were showing these people going into the court. You were very careful to follow the rules. They did not put the appropriate information on the site saying these people are protected, they can't be reported on. But they went through a kangaroo process. It was the foreign press, which is why I think they want to set up a global control of free speech and of social media because they don't want to see this type of thing happening again. But tell us about what you're facing. Tell us what you want to tell President Trump.
I'll be sent to prison tomorrow as a journalist for reporting journalism, for the crime of journalism.
Yeah.
You give asylum to Cubans. You give asylum to people who are journalists. My life is in danger. It's not a joke. It's seriously in danger. The lies that are told about me, I have exposed and embarrassed the British government and the establishment who are intent on the destruction of our culture and our nation. All of these issues, I've embarrassed them by highlighting the crimes. I've become the most watched journalist in the UK, and that scared them. And I terrify the establishment. And my support that grew terrified because I speak the truth with honesty. I speak about real issues that affect us in our towns and cities. And I'm loved by the people. And they hate that. So this is now the ultimate. The ultimate is to get rid of me. I'll be put in prison for, do you know, it's a civil offence. This is a civil offence. I was not allowed a jury. The Magna Carta common law says that if you can face more than 6 months in prison, you'll be tried by 12 members of your peers. The reason for that is for fair justice.
You don't have a jury. Let's underscore that. You don't have. Trial by jury is one of the foundations of British common law. Trial by jury. Hard won. And that's now been swept aside in your case, right?
I wasn't allowed a jury. I wasn't allowed a jury. So this is the only thing that they could get through the back door, the Attorney General's government. They could bring it through the back door to then sentence a man to up to 2 years in prison with no jury. I've been convicted by an appointed judge, a judge who was appointed to her position 2 weeks ago. Appointed to her position 2 weeks ago. She has been appointed and she's about to, and you know what? Anyone can look at this. Look at the video of what I done outside Leeds Crown Court and you will see the lies yourself in what the judge is saying. This, with careful examination, this case proves the corruption of the judicial system in the UK. It proves the lies being propagated and told, the lies being put out in sentences, which are then spread around the world by the corporate globalist media, the fake news media, which are lying to the public about who I am, the man I am, the crime I've committed. I didn't know you would prejudice any jury. That's been proven. The lies that are being said, I've committed no crime. It's a non-crime. And I'm about to be locked up and imprisoned and probably murdered at the hands of ISIS terrorists who are in control of our prison system. This is a warning to the United States. Your prison systems will be used. The most weak and vulnerable people in your society, the people who have been wronged all their life, the poorest people living in poverty, who will then end up in prison when they're weak and they're vulnerable. An ideology will inset in that prison system. It will grow and it will breed, and it's happening in ours. They've taken over our entire prison system. Car thieves are going into jail and they're coming out radical jihadis. That's going to happen to yours and nothing's being done to prevent it. And I'm going to be fed like a lamb to slaughter in that prison system that's controlled by jihadis. It's controlled by them. And I'm a journalist. I'm a man who loves my country. I love free speech. I have been convicted for exercising your First Amendment. If you care about freedom, if you care, you're giving asylum to people from different cultures from you who don't even love your country. I love the United States of America. I love Donald Trump. I absolutely love him. If there's one person I admire more than anyone in the world, it's that man.
Yeah, over the weekend, I saw your reporters out there. I saw one of the pictures of the crowd, and there was an American flag being waved in the background there. I pointed that out. I looked at this. These people, they identify more with America because the British government has been overthrown by this open border situation. It is a war against the British people. It's a war against the American people, people of every nation. And the first thing that happens in war is they come after the people, they come after free speech, they come after a free press. That's why they're coming after you, Tommy.
It's a worldwide war for freedom, and we're losing. We're losing, and we've lost it. In England, we've lost it. We've lost free speech. We've lost it. It's gone. And now we've lost the freedom of the press. It's gone. And the reality, we haven't even got democracy. Look at Brexit. We haven't even got democracy, and people are waking up and realising that. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go. I've got to collect my kids from school. This is my last night with my children. I'm going to have to kiss my kids goodbye with the inevitable outcome that I could die in this prison sentence for asking Muslim paedophiles how they feel about their verdict, causing them anxiety. That's the reality.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that happening. And again, I know that you want to spend as much time with your kids as possible. Very serious situation, and we'll do everything that we can to draw attention to this. Do not want to see this happen. It's horrible what's happening in the UK. It's being done here in the United States as well. Thank you, Tommy. Again, you can find him, TR News. What Tommy Robinson was pointing out is that he was at the nexus of this fraud that is being perpetrated by the people who've opened up our borders. Because they pretend that they are all about defending women, and yet they bring in people with cultures, foreign cultures, that do everything they can to treat women as chattel property, running rape gangs and so forth. And that's what they don't want people to understand. They don't want, as I've said many times in the past, you've got the Democrats here saying, oh, look, you can't say anything about Islam now on social media. They're now protected class of people. They say, well, this is general, no criticism of any religious groups. Don't tell me they're going to protect Christians from being criticized by LGBT. We don't want their protection, quite frankly. We can handle the criticism. I don't need to be protected from criticism by atheists or criticism by the LGBT or criticism by Muslims. And I don't think that they should be protected if I have any criticisms to say about what they're doing or about their culture. But of course, our culture has to be destroyed. And that's what they're doing with this. They don't want people to see what is ultimately going to happen. I said this when I was covering the DNC back in 2016. I went there for their convention. And I said, look at this. You've got Hillary Clinton, and they're talking about women's rights and feminism and gay rights, and then they bring up people who support Sharia law. I said, these two things are going to be an explosive mix, and it is inevitable that the kind of things that are happening in the UK now, as Tommy Robinson pointed out, Muslim men, 4 to 5% of the population, but 90% of the convictions of these sex gangs that are grooming and kidnapping women there, it is a cultural thing. And they don't want you to see that connection. They don't want you to see what's happening. And it is a kangaroo court proceeding. They don't have a First Amendment in the UK, but they have a cherished tradition of trial by jury. Our courts, our judiciary in this country have managed to gaslight the American people about how, you don't want jury trials. They gaslight juries. Juries don't even know if you have a jury. They don't even know what their true power is. They're there to judge the law, not just the facts of the case. And these are traditions that came out of England. England doesn't have a Bill of Rights, but they have a series of precedents and traditions that they're supposed to uphold by. Trial by jury, one of the fundamental foundations of British rights in the British country, and that's now been swept aside in the case of Tommy Robinson, that kangaroo court. President Trump had a chance to try to save the life of Asia Bibi. Fortunately, the Muslim gangs in Pakistan were not able to kill her. They wanted to kill her because she had the audacity to drink water from a well while being a Christian. It would have been a wise thing for him to do. His advisors failed him. She was a woman of color. She was a legitimate political refugee whose life was in danger. But forget about the political optics. It was the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do to save Tommy Robinson, President Trump. You need to step up.
We're bringing back one of the biggest fan-favorite formulas we've ever offered with even better ingredients. Ultimate Bone Broth. InfoWars Life is proud to bring you a powerhouse bone broth formula to help push you to your limits. This incredible formula will help you get the most out of your workout with the power of ultra high-quality bone broth, one of the most popular health trends on the planet. Built with more than 7 different superfoods and crucial compounds, Ultimate Bone Broth will help support your healthy muscles, digestion, tendons, and ligaments, while also supporting your body's fight against free radicals. This incredible chicken bone broth formula contains time-tested ingredients such as turmeric root, chaga mushroom, goji berry powder, bee pollen, and alfalfa herb powder to support your body. It's time to experience what Ultimate Bone Broth can do for you. Get Ultimate Bone Broth now at 50% off.